Hey friend, in today's watercolor tutorial, we're going to be going over how to paint this loose and moody landscape of Redwood National Park. Without further ado, let's get painting. Today's watercolor tutorial, I am using these 6 colors. We've got Terra Verte, Sap Green, Perylene Green, Burnt Umber, Payne's Gray, and VanDyke Brown. My page I'm working with is a size 5 by 7 inches. And the 2 brushes I'm using are by Princeton, and I have a size 12 and a size 6 round brush. To start, I'm going to saturate my paper with plenty of water using my larger brush, and we are going to kind of build our painting starting from lighter colors to darker colors. So that's just an easier way to build dimension, just starting out with your lighter hues and kind of building from there. So once you have your page fully saturated, we are going to be starting with Terra Verte. And if you do not have this color, you can simply mix a green that you have on hand, tone it down with some brown and just a light touch of blue, and really water it down so that way it's a really light hue of that color. But just a really kind of dusty sage green is what we're going for. So to start, I am just going to take my larger size 12 brush, and I'm just gonna build kind of this kind of foggy quality of our painting here. We're gonna have some trees that are in focus and some that are more distant in the background. So to kind of start to build that, this color is a really good color to use to slowly incorporate our different values from light to dark with this composition. And I'm having some areas that are slightly white, some that have a little bit more concentration. Doesn't have to be exactly like this, but just some variegated tones of this really dusty green. Okay. And now from here, I kind of want to start to build our forest floor slightly. And this time I'm going to switch gears to our size 6 brush. And I'm just going to do a really, really faint outline of a pathway on the forest floor. And depending on how dry your page is, it's going to bleed out just a little bit. So you may want to just start light with the burnt umber, but just slowly, just let it kind of bleed out. And it's just kind of a backward C curve. And the base of the painting, the C curve is wider than the top, just like so. And then from here, I want to take some Perylene Green. And I love this color, but if you do not have this color, really saturating a good amount of green, some blue, and some brown, and maybe just a touch hair of black would create this really rich dark green. So I'm simply just incorporating this green towards the bottom and just tapping my size 6 brush as I go. And I'm adding some just on the left and right side of this path here. And then as we get closer to the path, I'm just going to take some watered down sap green and just incorporate it slightly on the sides, being mindful that our page is still wet, so I'm giving it a little bit of breathing room against the pathway. But this is just to get kind of a loose foundation for our layout of our painting. Okay, now from here, I'm going to be using VanDyke Brown and Burnt Umber for the watercolor Redwoods. And I'm going to first start with some Burnt Umber, and we're going to shade the trees using some VanDyke Brown, which is just slightly darker than Burnt Umber. And I'm going to start by laying out our trees here by doing a long vertical line. And I'm starting thin for now, and we can always build from there. And I'm just layering some burnt umber and guiding my brush just to get the right width of the tree that I'm looking for. And if you notice, the base of the tree is just a hair bit wider than the top. So here's our first tree. From there, I kind of want to have a couple more trees next to this one that are more dainty. And so I'm going to do a smaller, more narrow or skinny redwood. And the base of it is slightly touching the base of the first tree here. Okay, and now while our page is still damp, I want to lay out just a few trees off in the distance. So I'm going to just paint a couple smaller, more narrow and shorter redwoods off in the distance here. So here's one narrow one. It's slightly shorter. I'm gonna do maybe a smaller one that's kind of faded out in between here. So this one's just not quite as bold. We're gonna definitely add some more detail on these two trees off towards the right that we first did. So that'll make those ones kind of stand out and more in focus than these, than this third and fourth one. Okay, and then from here, I just want to do kind of a really pale wash of burnt umber. I may have a redwood off in the distance here. Maybe this one's quite tall. Frankly, they're all tall. Let's be real. Redwoods and sequoias are the tallest trees in the world, which is so cool. If you haven't been, Big Sur and Redwood State Park are just beautiful. They have some just stunning redwoods. Okay, now I'm just going to do a kind of narrow tree off towards the right here, kind of leaning slightly. Okay, and then off toward the left, I want to have some of our larger, like more forefront redwoods. And I have a little bit of water that I want to sop up real quick. So if this happens where you have some water pooling, you can always just kind of lift it with some paper towel. So now I'm just going to lay out a larger redwood. I'm using a deeper saturation of burnt umber. And then I'll paint one slightly higher up towards the left. I may widen this front one just a little bit because I do want it to be the largest redwood. Okay, now from here we can start to kind of lightly just build our greenery before we add more details to the trees and like the bark and texturizing and stuff like that. So I'm going to add some sap green to my brush, and I want to just lightly tap some sap green over some of the trees here. And some of the trees that are more in this view of the light are going to be lighter in color. So we use plenty of sap green for that, and a little bit of the Terra Verte. I don't really know quite how to say that. What? Terra Verte? Okay, I'm just going to go with that. If someone knows, definitely let me know what's the correct pronunciation there. Okay, so I'm just tapping just some light sap green here. And I'm doing that all the way to the top. And then I'm going to take a little bit of Terra Verte here. And I'm just going to buff out this area with just some texturized soft green here. Just using the tip of my brush. I'm going to add some more in between these trees here. Okay, and now I'm going to add just a touch of textured Terra Verte on this other tree. That's kind of more faded into the mist. And I'm kind of overlapping on some of the trunk as well. Okay, and now as we go slightly outward, I'm going to use our Perylene Green now to add some branch greenery. So I'm just overlapping, just like so, on top of the trunk. And though we don't have our branches on yet, we will add those shortly. I'm really just doing kind of some swooping motions, kind of fanning out, so kind of up to down, this kind of swooping, almost like a eyelash or something, like it's just swooping downward. Okay, and now I'm just going to add a few touches of the Perylene Green just to help shade and tone down some of the sap green. Okay. Now I just want to shade this area to the right because it's more in the shadow. So I'm just taking some watered down Perylene Green off towards the right side here. I'm going to add just a touch of it as well in between these two trees. Okay, now I can add our greenery off towards our left tree here. And again, I'm just adding some layered Perylene Green. It's a really beautiful, rich green here. And the branches that we'll add will kind of help connect some of this greenery here. So that way it doesn't look like it's floating. And then off towards the left side of the page, I'm going to add some watered down Perylene Green as well, just to help kind of build the depth and the dimension and contrast. And then I'm just going to layer a little bit of textured Perylene Green. Now I'm just going to take a little bit of Sap Green and blend it with a little bit of Perylene Green, so just kind of a mid-tone green. And I'm just going to add a few touches of greenery on these kind of more distant trees here. Okay, so now I want to kind of just texturize some of our forest floor here. So I'm gonna layer a bit more Perylene Green, just tapping using my size 6 brush. I'm gonna overlap it just a touch on some of the base of our more in focus, larger redwoods here to the left. And now I'm going to do the same thing to the right. And then I'm just going to take some plain sap green and just carry on that texture to this area of the forest floor that's more well lit. Just tapping loosely with my brush. I'm making sure that the edges of the pathway have a nice texture to them, using the green just to kind of tap along those edges. Okay, and now I'm going to take just a touch of VanDyke Brown, and I'm going to add just a little bit more depth to the texture of the pathway, adding some VanDyke Brown overlapping slightly on that sap green. And then I'm just gonna do some just light texturizing and shading along the pathway using the tip of my brush and some light pressure. And I just applied some more VanDyke Brown to the left side. Now I'm just gonna take my watery brush here. I've just gotten some more water with my brush, and I'm just gonna help smooth out that transition there with some water, just to help kind of buff out the shading. Okay, and then from here, I'm just gonna take some VanDyke Brown, and I really wanna shade our trees here. The redwoods are definitely darker than sequoia trees. They are very, very large, just like their cousin trees that are the sequoias. But their bark is slightly darker. So at this point, I'm just taking my size 6 brush, and I want my darkest side to be on the left side of the trees. And all I'm gonna do here is just add some vertical texturization with the tip of my brush. And adding that texture with the tip of my brush, I'm just going to build the dimension and the contrast of these trees. And again, I'm just using light pressure and just doing some loose vertical lines on the bark of the redwoods. And I'm kind of weaving them in between the greenery here. All these vertical lines, just kind of tucking them in. I'm making sure the left sides are the most shaded and concentrated with that color. And I'm just gonna add some more VanDyke Brown in these vertical lines all throughout the rest of the redwoods. And as we go to the ones that are more faded, I'm gonna just use a little bit of a lighter hue and a more watery texture with the vertical lines compared to the ones that are in focus here. But I'm just carrying on with this VanDyke Brown and just repeating that similar process by weaving in between the different bits of greenery and all along the trunks. So now that I've added my shading using my VanDyke Brown, I'm now going to add some branches using the same color. And for the branches, they kind of angle downward. So I'm going to just add a few kind of jagged, irregular, crooked, angled lines, just like so. The branches aren't super thick compared to the trunks, that's for sure. But I'm just adding a few kind of just angled, jagged branches that swoop downward, just using my size 6 brush here. And I'm incorporating some overlapping on top of the greenery and some maybe that are kind of weaving between some of the greenery just in the white gaps. And some of the branches may have like a smaller branch kind of stemming off of the other branch. Some may overlap slightly. And I'm just going to add all of these just throughout the trees, weaving in and out of the greenery, pointed and angled downward. All right, the last step I'm gonna do is just add a touch of some Payne's gray to our landscape here. And that's gonna just be our color we're using to shade some of the forest floor. And I just wanna incorporate some of the Payne's gray towards the left side of a couple of our redwoods, and I'm just layering it towards the bottom, just tapping with my brush here. I hope that you enjoyed this Redwood National Park watercolor landscape tutorial. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel so you don't miss any upcoming landscape tutorials.